Welcome to Season 4 of Outstanding Women Leaders, Witty and Wise Conversations. I'm your host, Katie L. Eads, founder and chief owl at Outstanding Women Leaders, Owl Professional Coaching and Podcast, an organization dedicated to inspiring leaders. Owl is on a mission to host 100 million witty and wise conversations that inspire you, change the way you think, and stir your soul into action. That disruption begins with a set of rules to guide our conversation today. Number 1, nobody gets to be wrong. Number 2, nobody gets to be right. Number 3, everybody gets to be vulnerable. And number 4, everything is included. We do not edit here. This conversation is exactly what it needs to be in this moment in time. I've asked our guests to join us via video to allow us to create authentic connection. Eyes are the window to the soul. You will be seen here. You will be heard. There is space for you. When this conversation comes to a close, I will ask our guests 3 questions. If you've tuned in before, you know what they are. And if you haven't, you don't want to miss them. But enough about me. Today, I'm excited to welcome Outstanding Women Leader, Jodanna Knabe. I knew I needed to ask you your last name. Say it, Knabe?
Yeah.
Jodanna.
Mm-hmm.
Jodanna Knabe.
Yep.
She's amazing, and now you won't forget it. She's the founder and lead organizer with Messes to Miracles, a professional organizing service launched in 2010 to make dreams come true for overwhelmed people lost on where to start with their out-of-order space. Jodanna has a strong conviction to help teach and guide people towards a better life, and she knew just where to start with their stuff. Jodanna has created a 3-step simple process to not just help, but to teach clients how to live a lifestyle of organization. While most people struggle in this area, Jodanna has literally always done this, even as a kid in her own home. And from a young age, she found joy in sharing that gift with others. In high school, when hanging out with her girlfriends, getting ready to go out, they would be in the bathroom doing their hair and makeup, and she would be in the bedroom reorganizing their closet. Their parents loved her. Seeing how healing it was for people to feel better in their space and how it caused people to have less stress and more time resonated with her. Who doesn't need that in their life? Jodanna realized that this is where she can be best of service to others. She has this amazing client testimonial, and I'm going to leave you with my own client testimonial because Jodanna is the Dan Whisperer. I had the pleasure of having her do a walkthrough. She's also the Katie Whisperer. I haven't told her that yet, but the first thing I said to her when I'm like, my office is good. I need you to fix his space. And she said, okay, well, this is my process. Like, just tell me, how this space is working for you. Very Dr. Phil. What's not working for you over here? And through that, my entire office is rearranged. As you can, this is how everyone has seen it on the podcast. And it took her less than a New York minute to convince Dan to do all the things I was telling Dan he should do. So welcome. Without further ado, we're so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. That's funny. I didn't know I was the Katie Whisperer too, but I'm glad to help you both. It was a blessing for me as well. It's always a blessing to get to see my clients learn stuff. That's where my heart is with the business. So that's the special part, when people get it and the light bulb goes on and transformation happens, and literally the name of the business, Messes to Miracles. So I try to do what I can to help people, reclaim their space and have a better, just a better feeling, but more productivity, or for whatever reason they need that space to be for, if it's just to be calmer or, whatever. So
yeah,
thanks for having me.
You ask powerful questions. So Jodanna is much like a coach in that way, where she's investigating. She has questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're ever going to change Katie's mind, you have to ask me the right questions.
Yep.
And that you did. You let me talk it out, and then you just dropped a few nuggets of suggestions and walked away. And that is some really good shepherding. You brought some very good parenting. And what I would love for you to share is just how you turn a lot of things that are messes into miracles. Jodanna is the great experimenter. If you're into the human design, she's a 3/5, just like Dan. That's why she gets to be the Dan Whisperer. So she's always experimenting, and she has the hero, save the day energy about her that we all see. So tell me a little bit about, little Jodanna and how you just went around in your life experimenting with messes and miracles.
Well, number one, I was a big mess. Still working on some of that. um, I don't claim that in the negative way. I claim that as like, look what God's done in my life kind of thing. But it's definitely been a journey. I never even thought to call it that positive word of a journey until probably about like 5 years ago. 42 years old. And so I'll just throw that out there. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, why am I know why that's happening because something doesn't want me to share this story. Excuse me, hold on. I'm not supposed to share this, but I'm going to press through. So anyway, so excuse me for the way I sound, but let's move on. So basically, as I was growing up, I learned a lot about myself the hard way. I think it's beautiful. I'm called a great experimenter. Everybody always says, well, you just have to learn by your mistakes. And I made many, many, many of those. But, I went through a long time in life where I was like, these bad things that have happened to me, like, those aren't going to define me. And then as I grew up, I realized those are actually what has defined me, but it's how I've chosen to let it define me. Like I've learned a lot through literally the messes I created or other people created or whatever in my lifespan. I'm just really learning these last few years a lot more about myself. I was just telling someone the other day that, like on an airplane when they say put your mask on first and then you can help others. So I've spent the majority of my life people pleasing, putting the masks on other people, helping save them, helping fix whatever situation they've had going on in the last couple of years. I've realized I probably should put mine on. So, and in a weird way of saying it too, I also had a mask on, but it wasn't like the right mask. Does that make sense? So I was really kind of what they call masking. So I was just doing what I could through my life and never really being true to my authentic self. And even though a big part of my heart is really to help people, I'm learning I really need to allow that help to happen in myself. So I've learned so much through all of my messes. I'm now believing I'm on the other end of things. You see my cat tail. Sorry. This is where the best lighting is in my place, and my cat agrees. So he likes to be over here. So you may see him once in a while. But it's gotten to a point where I feel like I'm now, instead of going up with making lots of messes, I'm now starting to ride the wave and enjoy like what I've learned and experienced. And I've been doing the organizing, decluttering, professional coaching, business, whatever this is, that I got going on, all kinds of fun stuff with people's stuff. Like you said, coaching, asking them questions as I go through. A lot of that is, it's really helpful. I've been doing this for like about 13 years now. So there's been a lot of exploring and learning about people as I go, a lot of experiences that I've learned in that regard in the business part of things. But it's also become, like healing for myself too, because I get to have this gratification of seeing people grow and seeing people heal, kind of like what you just said about your space. And then, it blesses me so much to know that all the messes I've gone through in my life give me this opportunity to see other people grow. And when you get to be 30 years old, starting to do what you're called to do in life, and you get to be happy every day that you go to work, not everybody can say that when they're 30 years old. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to sit back and like look at my life from like a different perspective and be surprised that I made it this far. I brought tissues with me because I had a feeling I may cry once or twice here during this. So I'm going to do my best to hold off as long as I can. But I think that we all go through things for a reason. And I could get in the long, dirty list of all the things that have happened to me. And I'm not going to give that stuff glory, but the way that I'm still here, the way that I'm still willing to help people and to trust people with my feelings and to move forward, I think is inspirational to myself, and hopefully it's inspirational to other people. But really, I guess the biggest thing I want to get across just about myself and how I've grown through things, that my faith, when I was 27, I gave my heart to the Lord, and I don't know that I would even be alive at this point had I not been able to do that and have a foundation in hope and faith in my life, just because of the countless things. And I don't mind to be completely candid. Like, there's been rapes, there's been molestation, there's been divorce, there's been like rejection, so many things in my life that you would think I wouldn't be able to get up the next day and smile and keep going. And having this organizational business has given me a new purpose. I'm not trying to be defined by my labels, but I'm also, quote unquote, a single mom. I've been a single mom since Kaden was 6 months old. I consider myself a full-time single mom. And, this isn't a bash session, but, I've really been, there's been very limited amount of time that Kaden has been away with his father. So like a 98% full-time mom. And that is definitely a purpose for me, is to be, like you said, shepherding and parenting, like being his parent, and being his friend, and learning about his authentic self while I'm learning about mine. Again, not to bash, but just my whole life, I've kind of been told I'm too much, you're too emotional, you got too much going on. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to help. I was told a lot, oh, you'll figure it out on your own. And I spent a long time figuring a lot of things out on my own. And it's created a lot of messes in my life that now, as I grow up and I get a little more wise and a little more mature and a little more humble, I'm learning to take what I had to learn the hard way and put it into being a better parent, putting it into being a better friend, being a better businesswoman, all of the above. Forgiveness is a huge thing. This cat tail is driving me crazy. It's like the ADHD or something. I keep focusing on him. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, but I feel like everything I've gone through, like Katie was saying, ultimately, Messes to Miracles, the name for my business, kind of generated in the last couple of years. I was originally known as JK Organizers. People laugh, they're like, just kidding. Like, I was like, no, it's my initials. But then I tried to turn it into just keep organizing, and it just was, it was a hot mess. Well,
I love that. I love hearing those like evolutions of a business, right?
Yeah.
So just kidding, just keep organizing.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that you've built a career on cleaning up people's stuff messes. Do you see a thread or a link between people that are messy inside having messy lives outside, or do the messy inside lives get to be more cleaned up on the outside? I have questions.
So it's definitely a combination. We're a direct effect of our environment, but also our environment's a direct reflect of what's going on inside us too. So there's a whole lot of psychology and organization. It's not just about getting some pretty bins and labels and making the space look great, even though, yes, that's like the final outcome, of course. But really, there's a lot of psychology. It's why I ask a lot of questions. I spend that first part of the business, like the first part of the sessions with people, really asking, like when I do an in-home assessment, I'm literally doing an assessment. I actually used to just call it consultations. And in consultations, you're kind of just consulting, you're just learning kind of what they want done. But in assessment, so I'm really coming into all these words that I've chosen to use with the business. And of course, my tagline is seeing the light at the end of the clutter. Like, that's literally inspiring hope in people. And it's getting people to the point of okay, there is an end to this, like I'm not gonna have to live like this forever. But I do feel like with the assessment and asking questions, we don't get to a point in our life where we just know how to give people information that they really are searching for. Sometimes you have to be probed and asked, which is why we're doing this interview. If I were to just sit on here by myself and tell the world everything, I would probably just stare out the window. So that being said, you could probably ask me another question or something so I don't just ramble forever.
You're doing fabulous. So I love how you said we are a direct reflection of our environment, and also our environment is a reflection of us. Having the ADHD, like my environment is full of these Post-it notes because I am an out of sight, out of mind person. So we need those to be top of mind. And at the same time, I also like when I talk to you, I'm like, I still need clear space because then my head needs to be
Yep.
clear. And I'm like this dichotomy of a person where I have to have things out to see them, but also I need it to be organized. And I think of, my workspace as a teacher. This is why I told you I didn't need your help. I'm like, oh, I'm like the best at organizing a classroom. You want to put 35 desks in a room built for 24? Don't worry, I got it. But I find that sometimes our work environments is where we spend our time putting our oxygen mask on first. And in our home environments, we're over there putting our oxygen mask on everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so basically, I feel like most people are that like dichotomy, kind of what you said. Most people are a good kind of general. I need some stuff out, I need some stuff put away, but most people don't really know what they need put out and what they need put away. So that's also where I kind of come in and help work them through the thought process of how they operate every day, what they need out, what they don't need at all. So people also just need a permission. They just need a permission to know it's okay to let stuff go. So
yes, you gave me permission to buy baskets for my kitchen to put things in. And it sounds so silly, but the oxygen mask for me was like, I don't need to spend $20 on a basket. These things can just sit on the counter. And I know that this sounds insane, but well, maybe it won't for you since you do clean up people's lives, but having these items in this basket sitting in my kitchen brings me so much joy versus if they were sitting on the counter.
And it's crazy, right? I mean, you wouldn't even have thought about it, but now you're like, gosh, it's so tidy, but it's still out. Like, it's just, it feels good.
Yes. So Dan wants things out in the kitchen so he could see them. He wanted every spice to be out in so before we moved here, we had above our stove, I put a shelf there and it was full of spices. That's what he needed. And I'm like, I grew up as a kid with a kitchen that had all the stuff on the counters. Like, why is that button on the counter? Because that's where the buttons go. Why is that, like just random things. And, to this day, I walked into At Home. I didn't know what an At Home store was. I walked into At Home yesterday because my neighbor Janice pointed it out.
It's a dangerous store.
The amount of overwhelming hit my senses. You should have seen me in there. There was so much happening. I'm like, I loved it. Like the internal, the ADHD that they talk about when they picture a kid like bouncing up and down, like that was happening inside of my body when I was there. I did not buy anything because I couldn't even figure out what it was that I would buy. It didn't matter that it was organized. There was just too much to look at. And I think that's how I feel about counters. But then you walk into my office, right? I don't like a kitchen. There's too much to look at in the kitchen. But then you walk into my office and then there's so many things. So Messes to Miracles, you're coming in and I love that you talk about working through people's thought process. So I just shared my running consciousness of my own thought process. But you really do have this gift for creating a space for people that feels very safe. Having someone come into your home is very intimate. Opening up a closet that I have, like to show you, like, okay, you come in my home, it's great, but like to open up a closet and to show you my skeletons, my taco costume and my box of shoes. These are things that you're very, very gifted at. So I know you have a 3-step process. Walk us through a little bit of, where does one start if they're staring at a mess and they don't have your phone number?
Right. Well, first I want to make sure I definitely say this in case I forget, but when you tapped on that judgment zone, opportunity, and there's literally no judgment with me. I just want to fix the situation. I want to help find solutions. I'm not in there to be like, oh my gosh, you have too much stuff. I'm very aware, and I try to be very aware of the words that I use with people so that it is like speaking life into their situations. And when I ask the questions, I really think, I know that God gave me the ability to have like really compassionate face on and a really compassionate heart when I'm in people's spaces. And I really try not to be judgmental at all. I try to help them have that safe space that they can just talk to me about the stuff that's been driving them crazy. Or, like you said, like Dan had some stuff to work on, you had some stuff to work on. I have a lot of people who are like, you've literally saved my marriage because our stuff was like straining it, not that yours was, I'm just saying like, I have a lot of people over 13 years tell me like, now I can talk to my mom because she would just come in and tell me to do all these things. And it's stressful stuff. You wouldn't believe that our stuff makes us so stressed. And we're not taking it with us when we pass on. Like it's just stuff. And if it creates that much problems in our emotional lives and our physical lives with people and relationships and just with our own health, like there's psychology, there's health benefits, there's relationship benefits, social benefits, all the things that, it hinders, and it's just stuff. So when I come in, I definitely am already desensitized to people's things because it's not mine, right? So the number one thing I try to tell people, if you don't have my number and you haven't had me come by to help you yet, the one piece of advice I can give to people to start off is to desensitize themselves from their stuff and pretend it's their friends that they're going through, that they're helping them make that decision on what to keep or what to let go. And also the number one thing you can do is when you walk into a space, just get everything up off the floor first. I don't care if you pile everything on your bed, but get it up off the floor. There's psychology behind the fact of being able to walk into a free space. Your brain is looking at the floor because that's where it's telling your feet to go. And if your floor has anything on it, your brain will think, oh, that's a job I got to work on. Oh, that's something in my way. It's hindering you, right? So if you get everything up off the floor and put it on a bed or put it up on a table, even get a pop-up table, get it up off the floor, your brain will want you to come in and work on that space more. And then
that is brilliant. That is because you told Dan to unpack his boxes, and then we got this stupid table that I wanted to throw out like many times. And now that table sits there, and he does. He had said for 2 years that he was going to go through this stuff. And then you come in and you just like made a few suggestions. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, I do need to get it all out and look at it. And brilliant. Because it's all on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something about, and then also when people have things on the floor a lot, they tend to get so used to it, then their brains don't even see it at a point in time.
Yeah,
and they'll
it
just
becomes
walk
a
right
piece
over
of
it.
furniture. 100%.
Yeah, they just walk right over it, walk right past it. And so here's a great psychological trick for that as well. I just spoke last night about this. Take a picture of your space. And I do this with my clients all the time, and we'll walk in another room and I'll show them that picture and they're like, oh gosh. It's because you can like separate yourself from that space with a picture, and you're looking at it as if it's, oh, that's not my room, that's someone's room. And then you're like, wow, that should be moved there. Like it just gives you a different perspective. So the 3 things you can do if you do not have me help you, but you want to get started, get everything up off the floor, take a picture of your space, and desensitize yourself from those items as if you were someone coming in to help someone else. That really can help you get moving forward. But yeah,
the thing about that is, that is kind of what coaching is on an individual basis. Only everything is in your head. And so like we're getting it out. And the way that you see like items and like how to perfectly place them is very similar to how my brain sees words. And so then we get them out of the head, and then we don't take, I like to take a helicopter ride so like we can look down at the photo, right? And I always make people, I'm like, all right, you're gonna be 150 in this one. So we're gonna look at your life from 150 years.
That's awesome.
Right. And then you're looking down at this like one little thing and you're like, dude, that's not really a big deal anymore, is it? So like the desensitizing that you're talking about, it's like when you think about your journey, you riding your own wave and learning life the hard way. I've learned life the hard way in some ways as well. There is something to be said for desensitizing, for not being attached to the emotion, but just riding the emotion that's there. And we do have a lot of emotions about our stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of attachment to stuff, and it's like, and by the way, whoever's watching this, I'm giving you permission. If someone gives you something, you don't have to keep it. So we'll just leave that there. But yeah, we're attached to things because someone gave it to us, or there's a memory attached to it. Someone passed away and you feel like you have to keep all the things that was either left to you, or you're cleaning out someone's space. I can also help with that, by the way. But there is psychology with that as well, with emotional attachment to stuff. There's twofold things. There's emotional attachment to stuff, and there's also there's like, with that, there's guilt, and there's the feeling of resentment, regret, like anything, all those kind of icky feelings that attach themselves to stuff. But then also there's this emotional situation you have to go through by making the decision to work on your space. A lot of people have this like like fear of success, I guess you could say, or fear of failure and things like that. But I see it more times than not in my clients. It's those final steps to get the projects done. They like avoid them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very interesting to see, like, they could be having this like forward fast train movement. We're getting all this stuff done. And then it's like these last few things, they're just like paralyzed. And I have yet to figure out how to put a name on that. I'm an organizer, put labels on everything, even though I don't like labels on people. I don't like the word hoarders. I don't like the word minimalist. We like to be balanced, right? So I don't like labels, but except on stuff and on the way we process. So there is something to say about the emotional and psychological point of things, where people either can't go into a space because they are overwhelmed and they don't know how to deal with it, and that's too emotional to deal with. So they don't like the feelings they're getting when they're really processing through stuff, so they put a halt up and they don't want to do it. There's the emotional part of, I don't know what to do with this because my friend gave it to me, or this was from my deceased relative. So then they put a halt up for that. So it is really, like you said, realizing, again, once you desensitize yourself. And for some people, that's really hard. And there's no time limit. Like you said in the beginning, no one's right or wrong here. Like, it's kind of the same thing with my clients. There's no time frame. People are like, well, how long is it going to take for me to get through all this? I'm like, I have no idea. I've done this for 13 years full time. And that's why I love what I do. Every person's different. Their stuff is different. Their process is different. And when it comes down to that, I feel like people need to understand that, like, they can have freedom and understanding that in their time, it's going to happen. I have clients that sometimes it takes 7 years to fully get the process and emotionally get through things. And they may have learned the physical process and they're keeping their home maintained. But one day they'll message me and it clicks and they're like, I feel so free from my stuff now. But they've learned the process. They've learned my 3 steps. Like, their home's in order, but that emotional process may take longer. Some people get that. And the first day they work with me, they're like, man, this is so easy now. I never thought to just let it go in that regard of desensitizing. We hear let it go, but that, to me, in a way, I guess that stems from my past of just being told, like, you're too much, whatever, like, oh, let it go, you're too emotional. So I don't really like those terms, but desensitizing and saying, let me just take a step back, like the helicopter ride, take a step back and look at my space from a different perspective, and then give myself permission to deal with that instead of being stuck right and paralyzed right in the middle of all of it. So I feel like there is a lot of coaching that goes into what I do. Like I said, I ask a lot of questions in that assessment. And then during the sessions, when I work with people, I may have to ask them questions here or there, but a lot of times they start asking me. They start saying, well, this is how I feel about this. What do I do about this? So there's this barrier that breaks at a certain point with them. And then they're like, yeah, let's keep going. Like, oh, our session's already up. I want to keep going, and that's the reward that I get. Or I'll get text messages like, I just taught my daughter how to do this and she's already thriving in this environment now. And that's the other thing. I know, you being a school teacher, when kids go to school, they're in school like 8 hours a day. Everything typically has a home because it's got to stay organized and tidy in classrooms, or else the kids are like, squirrel this, squirrel that. They're all over the place, right? So when they come home, and parents, this is a little tip for you. When they come home, you can't just tell them to go clean their room. If I told you as an adult to go clean your room, you'd be like, I don't know where to start. Same for your kids. Start using very specific tactics and say, go pick up all your dirty laundry and put it in the basket. Go pick up everything up off the floor and put it on the bed. Put your books on give them very strategic things to do, because that's what I do with my clients as well. But then the other part of it is with students and parents, like when they come home, they're used to an organized environment at least a third of their day, right? And so when they come home, if their environment is not neat and tidy, they also can't flourish. And then you're like, why can't you focus on your homework? Because my room's a hot mess. Like, so they're used to having that structure. And so if you have a couple of toy boxes and you're like, go clean up the playroom, they're going to stuff everything in those toy boxes, but they want that one toy on the bottom. The whole toy box is getting dumped. There's zero organization. And you think that they just messed up their whole room, but they just were focused on this one thing they needed to find. So keeping all of our spaces organized and tidy, we're designed to be in order. We're not designed to be in chaos. That's not how we were made. And so when your space is chaotic, you cannot, and I don't care who you are, you can tell me all day long. I've worked with artists, I've worked with people with ADHD, I've worked with people on any spectrum whatsoever, and they can try to tell me, oh, I know exactly where that is. It's on my desk. And that desk has this mound of stuff. Sure. Are they right? Yes. It's eventually on their desk, but it took them 30 minutes to find it. And they got, sidetracked on 3 other things that they found on their desk. That is not productive. That's not healthy mentally or physically for our time's sake. So the whole point of being more organized, and that's a different level for every person, but being neat and tidy and clean isn't the same as being organized. So there's so many different layers that I try to really work with my people to find out what layer are you wanting to sit at. And then when you're there, are you good with that? Then you want to move to the next level and so on. Some people come right out the gate and they say, I want everything to look like a perfect catalog. And that's boutique organizing. I'm a functional organizer. Let me make sure I say that for people to understand. At the end of the day, at the very end, I can make your place look like a catalog and look pretty with the pretty bins and the labels if that's what you want. But my job is to make you more functional in your space for whatever that looks like for you. And that's why I call myself a functional organizer. Because we got to figure out.
So when I get when I get my other next house, I have some rooms that I want to like aesthetically look like you walk in, you're like, this looks like a magazine.
Yes.
And then I want my real lived in spaces, like it's almost, it's like we took like the 1950s where they had the plastic on the couches and like, this is the sitting room and like, that's the hand towel for the guest and that's the guest soap, right?
Yeah.
I want,
yes.
I want some of that functional, but also I don't want someone to sit on the plastic couch and like slide off. So we'll work on that. I also really appreciate that you look at it from pretend this is your friend's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Part of coaching is like, would you say what you say to yourself to a friend? And we all know that answer. And we still can't figure out like, why aren't we good friends to ourselves?
Yeah.
Why aren't we good experimenters where we're like, oh, look at me. I'm a scientist in a lab. That experiment failed. It left me with a little bit of PTSD and trauma. So like, we're not going to do that one again. And then there's this experiment over here. Man, it was a miracle that mess didn't blow up in my face. Like, had we talked to ourselves like we would talk to our friends,
mm-hmm.
And that was my problem with Dan. It was personal. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to talk to Dan like I would talk to a friend. I was talking to him like I would talk to a partner in life, which was compromise.
Well, that's why
I'll have this ugly shelf in my. So what I loved about when you came over, because I had one conniving goal, which was to get this ugly glass shelf out of my closet. There's something to be said about your environment making you feel joy. Like I open that closet and like I don't have a giant walk-in closet, but I can walk into that closet. And so it's sort of created like what I visualize my next closet being, which would be, 3 times the size. And if you wanted an ugly glass shelf, I wouldn't even see it because it would be so far away. But I worked at a school once where the kids would come in and all the walls were blank. Because they were going to create in the next 6 weeks what would go on the walls so that they had ownership of what goes up there. And we have this stupid walls that talk movement in school where it's like, we got to put posters so that when they're not paying attention to you, they're learning something. And I'm like, wait a minute. You think that like they're going to learn something from this damn poster versus what I'm trying to say over here? No. And so when kids, it's interesting because it's almost like we hyper organize them at school in a way that's not natural. There's no ownership of it. So of course they're coming home and now the rules have shifted and like everything is different. And adults, we are also the same way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think too, with teaching with kids and stuff too, I love that. I think that all classrooms should start out with a blank slate like that. I think that's one of the most incredible ideas I've ever heard of for classrooms. And I think it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I remember even going to school, you just get so overstimulated with
Oh,
those type of posters. It's the same thing as walking over your stuff that's been on your floor for 5 months. It's because they may look at it one time, and after that, they'll never look at it again because they're trying to focus on you. Why do we want to distract them? When you said taking ownership, that's something I really do work with, especially when I work with kids. And by the way, parents, it's okay. Your kids may not listen to you when you tell them for the umpteenth time to go clean their room, but if I come in and I can work with younger people, they just seem to listen to people outside of their home better. So do spouses, so do relatives, because there's this sense of, I can be honest with you and tell you I don't want to listen to you, but somebody outside the home comes in, for some reason, we treat them with more respect. It's really sad. It should be the opposite. I mean, well, we should treat everybody with respect, but we tend to just think that our family members don't know as much as we know, right?
And outside opinions for that very reason that you talk about of taking the photo of the space. We do.
Yep.
I've already heard that opinion. That's a new one. And all you do, by the way, is you repackage those family members' opinions.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Absolutely. Yep. And with the kids, so that's where one of my biggest things in my heart is I really want to work with younger people, middle school up to college, to really help them know how to be more successful when they move out. And then they can start having their own space because they've been confined to one room. And then we see a lot of times they were not taught when they were growing up, like where to put things. So then when they move out on their own, it becomes just a spread out hot mess. Then they start learning the wrong behaviors, not wrong, but the messier behaviors right off the bat because they didn't have more structure. So I love working with young people, parents, if you need help with them, I love helping with them. But that's another reason why I ask so many questions. There's times where parents were like, oh, there's just trash all over the room. And it's just so simple as just saying, is there a trash can in their room? They're like, well, no, we have a trash can in the kitchen. I'm like, do you want to walk all the way from your bedroom all the way to the kitchen and throw trash away? And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, so put a trash can in every room, and then the trash has a home. Having a donation bin in everybody's bedroom, so that when they try something on and they don't like it, they can toss it in there. Just little tricks to make things more manageable and give everything a purpose in your home. But really, when it comes back to giving people ownership, I remember, it's funny too, we talk about the steps in our lives bringing us to a certain path, right? I even worked in a daycare. I was a cook in a daycare, and it's the weirdest thing is I can look back at everything as a stepping stone. I used to go in and for fun and ask the kids, you want vegetables today? Of course, they're like, no, right? And then but if you go in and you're like, do you want peas or do you guys want carrots today? And then like, oh, I want peas. I want I'm going to give them whatever I'm going to give them because it's in the kitchen. But the fact that they felt like, and it's obviously going to be peas or carrots, but, they felt like they had some ownership. They felt like they had the response. So then they all ate their vegetables. I was told that they've never had a cook that was able to get the kids to all eat their vegetables. I just talked to them. I gave them an option. And so it's something that I do with my clients as well. I've literally used that same tactic where I'm like, okay, well, you don't want to get rid of any of this stuff, but which one of these two is your favorite? And they might pick this one. And then I'm like, okay, so you didn't think this one was your favorite. Or I'm just like, which two, what of these, do you want to keep and don't keep? Like, that's my first main step. It's just going through things like keep or don't keep, keep or don't keep. And then they get to make that decision. If I just went into people's homes and started taking away things that I didn't think they needed, that's invasive. And that does not create any trust with people. And how do I know what people want to keep and don't keep unless I'm asking them? And then they start to learn that process. And I have so many people tell me, I hear you in my head, even, years down the line, like keep or don't keep. Like I'm standing there waiting for a pot of water to boil and I open up a drawer and I'm like, keep or don't keep, keep or don't keep. I mean, it's just so fun and easy and simple. But when you take ownership of your own space and ownership over that, people ask me all the time, like, well, how do I get rid of, stuff I've had for so long? And I'm like, honestly, the bottom line is you just have to make a decision to want to. You have to get to that point where you're like, enough is enough. I really want change in this environment because it's not what's working right now is not working.
Yeah. So
So
it's very much like what I do with coaching. When you are ready
mhm.
to say enough is enough and you want some guidance and support along the
Yep.
way, like this is exactly why you hire someone like Jodanna. And when I moved into this new house, there was just no way that I was just like meeting you was a miracle. You were at the event I met you at Fem City, a little shout out there for the networking group in Knoxville. And
Yes.
made perfect sense. What you don't my tagline is always, one session is all it takes. And I think that's very true of you as well, where
Yep.
sometimes you just need one session with Jodanna and those people will run with it like Dan and I did. And
Hmm.
sometime and then you might want to bring her back in for the next fight you have over something like when we get ready to move.
So
Um
I always say getting started is the whole battle. They always say getting started is half the battle. For me, I tell people getting started is the whole battle. So that's kind of the same
I
thing.
love that. And it really is, right? And once you've started, then you see, where do you need more support? Where do you bring Jodanna back? And that's of course that's why I always say one session is all it takes. I don't need every single person I meet to come back to me and need
Yep.
to get more coaching and guidance. I know like for you too, like you are setting people up from day one for success. And whatever they need, you're going to be able to
Yeah.
provide it for them, which is amazing. I'm going to pick your brain before we wrap up and ask
Yeah.
the
Please
fancy
do.
questions. So as the boomer generation is starting to leave us on this earth, they're leaving behind photos,
Hmm.
birth certificates, wedding rings,
Hmm.
driver's
China.
license. I'm thinking of like paper,
Okay.
memorabilia,
Hmm.
the certificate of when mom got her license in medical technology.
Sure.
What do you do with those things?
So there's a couple different options. There are companies that can digitize everything that has to do with paper photos. They can put it all on a drive of some sort, whatever works best for you. They can put it in the digital world of things. That is not my forte, so I always refer them to those people. I don't know how the technology, life works. I do my best, but so
Then
that's one
wait,
option.
so then I'm going from, 5 boxes of things to just this like little miniature thing that I'll
Yeah.
never do anything with, is what you're telling me.
I mean, the good thing about that is that if you have multiple siblings, right, you can have like 4 or 5 of those made, and then everybody has one instead of having all of that stuff. All of that stuff can really only go to one person, right? So when you do that, maybe one person really wants to store the stuff because they just aren't ready to let it go, but that is the best way to divide it out between family members. So if there's a lot of photos, and then you can digitize all of them so everybody can have access to it whenever they want. um but then nobody has to like fight over all the
I
all the
love that you think
certificates and all
families
that.
are fighting over these things versus like everyone's just
They
dumping them. And my dad is, I have
Yeah.
a degree in history. Like, so the natural historian of the family is getting all of the documents as an only child
Yeah.
as well. Um, like one of the thoughts dad had is maybe we just send these old photos to the people who are in the old photos that are still alive, and then they can decide if they want to throw them in the trash.
That is an option. It's a little more time consuming than but
Sorry,
yes,
what was
that's
your
absolutely
second
an
option?
option.
So there's
So
digitized,
this
second option.
Yes. So the second option, it is really just if you want to have and I tell people to do this with stuff as well that they get from people who've passed on. I know you're asking about the paper, but if you just lay them all out and take kind of one overall picture of the certificates or something, and maybe one overall picture of like diplomas, things like that. If you just want one general picture of kind of all of it, now in the digital world, we can zoom in and like look at things if we ever really want to go back to that. It's basically what that's doing is, and I know you said like you have this little thing that you'll never use again, and that's very possible. But what it does is it gets people to that next step of letting things go. So then they feel like, okay, I can now let go of these 5 boxes of things and I still have the memories. The whole point is keeping the memories alive. You don't have to keep the memories alive by keeping stuff, paper, furniture,
You hear
diplomas,
that, Dan?
certificates. But you don't, the memories are in here. So if we have something that can trigger those memories, like a photo, like a picture on a drive of some sort, I tell parents, with all of those papers that they get from their kids in school, all the things they've drawn, all the things they've done, taking pictures of those and putting it in one flip book, like a little happy book for the kid, and they can already have that, or you can store that till they're older. And if they look at it, they're like, okay, I don't really care about this, then they can then do with it what they want. Kind of the same thing with all the, documents and all those things. If you just get it down to where we're minimizing the amount of space it takes up down to the drive, then you can maybe, it's so much easier to have a little like drive, that you can put in your sentimental bin. Like you have one box. Like I've got one box.
I want you to know that I'm internally resisting everything you're saying right now. So now you found my weak spot, my kryptonite.
It's okay. It's okay.
I think of it from, I don't even have children, but the goal is to have some. And then I'm like, and I'm a history major. So I'm like, primary sources is the real thing. And like, if
I agree.
Right? Like technology was lost in ancient Egypt. Did they have computers? And then, they mineralized everything and Marie Kondoed their stuff. And that's why we don't know.
Yes.
So I will leave our audience for the hoarders in the group. I have a giant old trunk. And I did have to get rid of some of the things my parents saved that I wrote as a kid. But I do think that, and this too, there's a reason why certain things we save. There's a reason why certain things resonate for us. And some of them as a child, I was like, dang, that kid really knew who 40-year-old Katie was going to be in that poem.
Isn't that cool? That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's sort of been my reconciliation. And then I'm lucky that my great grandfather, there's a Hall of Fame that he's in. And so we're like, okay, we can donate this stuff to him. But then you're like, we really want to get rid of this 1940 football that the high school team signed that he's, I love this concept of taking the photo of it.
You can do a laminate book as well. Laminating. Yeah, that will really protect things from, like, over time, things will fall apart. They will like the color will come off, like they'll fade. So laminating something in its truest form tends to help, like, preserving some things. So if there's a few special things, preserve them. But yeah, I agree. The digital world, I lost a lot of pictures of Caden when he was little due to like when he was born, and I'll never get those back. And because our computer had a virus back then. He's 16 now. And, I only was able to collect pictures from other family members that took them when he was a baby. And so it's one of my hardest things to tell people. It's okay to let go of those physical photos, but technology has definitely come a long way. But yeah, it's doing a little flip book of the most important memories of the stuff or the pages. That's probably
scrapbooking. It's a great one. And I think also, like for me to get rid of this little dish or this, this stuff that is modern invention. The minute my hands are touching like a 1934 yearbook, I'm like, oh, I should preserve this. This is great. Right. Or like even birth certificates that have so much information if you wanted to go back and, build a family tree. So really great tips and advice. Now you've uncovered where my emotional connections are, which is to the past. We're going to wrap up with 3 questions. And before we do, thank you for sharing your Messes to Miracles business with us.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, we've all been through some messes in our life. And some of us, that becomes our story and our testimony, and we want to go out and share it. And for some of us, we just know that those gifts, when it's time to share it, will be able to be shared. Like I've had moments a week where I've coached. I'm like, man, I think I coached my entire life this week. Because different individual problems showed up for people that I'm like, yeah, I've slayed that mess. Oop. Yep. And so you really are a testament to, any mess that you want to bring Jodanna. She will clean it up and there will be light at the end of the clutter. And it's beyond just, look at this bin that I put my name on that I can find now. She's really just very intuitive. So thank you for experimenting with every mess in the world for us. So that you could show up and be a miracle that so many of us need. With that being said, what is your superpower?
You probably would be able to tell me my superpower better than I could even think of my own superpower. Um, my faith, like
That
the
must be what I
things
would
can,
say.
yeah, like my faith that I think you told me at one point I have like this divine willpower. So I think that mixed with like my faith that anything can work out, that anything can happen if we really have that willpower. Yeah, that would be it.
Mm. And what's your purpose?
Hmm. Well, obviously, being a parent to my kid and helping people in their space, but I think my genuine purpose is to experience things and to help other people experience them as well.
Mm. What's next for you?
Putting my shoes on and keep going. No, I'm just kidding. Not kidding. What's next for me? Definitely two different things. Business wise, moving additionally into the actual official coaching aspect of things is definitely finishing my book and moving more into the coaching aspect of things, not just only the physical, doing a combo of all of the above. I've done classes and coaching to a degree for, a while now during these years, but really making that come to fruition even more as a permanency in my business. And then in life, just learning how to find the good things in every day with me and my kid. So that's really what's next. Just keep going. Yeah. So putting my shoes on and going forward.
Yeah, and writing that book that we all can't wait to read.
Thanks.
Mm. And when we wrap up, I always give our guests the last word, whatever you'd like to share and leave on our guests' hearts today.
Don't be afraid to overcome your space so that you can have more time. Like that's what I teach people is that we want to have more time. That's in essence what life is about. It's having more time with our family members or our hobbies or our loved ones or whatever. And so don't be afraid to give yourself permission to let go of things and to go through this process so that you can spend more time doing what's even more important to you.